Hey everybody, Chris here. Just a quick note about this episode. This episode is with Paul Corsaro, our strength and conditioning coach from Chattanooga, who runs Crux Conditioning down there. And in the second half of this episode, for some reason, we have a bunch of clicking and popping and interference. I'm not sure why it was there. I've mostly gotten rid of it, but because I'm a stickler for this thing, I just wanted to point it out in case those things pop in, no pun intended, and Paul's voice might be changed a little bit here and there. So just letting you know. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton.
And I'm Paul Corsaro.
And together we form, I can't believe I've never thought of this, but Ben & Jerry. It's ice cream. It's Ben Moon and Jerry Moffitt. How have I never made that connection?
I don't know. I didn't make that connection until you said Ben Moon and Jerry Moffitt.
Duos that I've had to come up with throughout these board meetings, and I've never thought of Ben & Jerry. I've eaten many pints of Ben & Jerry ice cream. I've never come up with Ben Moon and Jerry Moffitt. I've even said, I'd love to go to Sheffield and interview Ben & Jerry, and it's never crossed my mind that that's an ice cream brand here. What the hell is wrong with me?
Do you think maybe they've got some sort of a private stake in Ben & Jerry ice cream?
I bet they do. They're both shrewd businessmen, so I bet that they're the owners. And those little drawings are Ben & Jerry when they're older. Though they're already older. So those are actual portraits of Ben & Jerry right now.
All right.
All right. We are here in Starcraft, the power company spaceship in the Red River Gorge. And we're here with Paul Corsaro doing our second for the night. And Paul is, I don't know which one of these is going to come out first, so we're just going to repeat a bunch of shit here.
Let's do it.
Paul is a strength trainer, climbing coach out of Chattanooga. You guys have heard him on past episodes about kettlebells, about good form. He's been in several of the all four of us board meetings, whole team board meetings. And he owns a gym down in Chattanooga, Crux Conditioning, which you should definitely visit if you happen to be going through Chattanooga, which many of you will, because it could be, if the weather were better in Chattanooga, I think it would be the best bouldering in the country.
I wouldn't argue with that.
That might be blasphemy for people who love Waco or love Bishop, but it's just a fact.
I would say if the weather was a little better and there was a bit more public land, that would be the thing.
If it had Waco's weather, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
But Waco has Waco's weather, so Waco's amazing. So
won't argue with that either.
All of the good places, though. So
Get out and vote for your national parks.
Get out and vote for your national parks. Is that what you said, Taylor?
Yeah. November 6th.
Get out and vote.
It's
going to be way after November 6th, but next November 6th, get out and vote for your national parks. And Paul's here tonight to talk about the top 5 reasons that we like kettlebells. Actually, kettlebells are kind of the reason we connected early on, because you were starting to get back into climbing. Is that right?
Yep. I had taken about a year and a half off or so, and I just reached out to you because I liked what y'all were doing with Power Company, or I guess you at the time.
Yeah, at the time it was just me, really.
We're doing with Power Company, and I asked you some questions about stuff, and we started talking about strength training and some kettlebell things, and things happened after that.
Yeah, and you wanted a climbing plan. You have to be really specific. Some things happened. You wanted a climbing plan, and you ended up doing the Boulder Strong program, and I wanted to learn more about kettlebells. So we ended up together. Well, you wrote the majority of our Kettlebells for Climbers plan,
Yep.
and then I went through it, tweaked it a little bit based on how climbers are training for climbing, and we kind of haggled back and forth until we had something we were both really happy with. And at this point, hundreds and hundreds of people have been really happy with the Kettlebells for Climbers
It's been
program.
cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've done it several times and feel like it's really a beneficial thing for my climbing, like moving into the V10 sphere. I thought it was one of the most important parts of my training, if not the most important part of my training.
Where do you think it's fit the best in kind of your climbing season? Like more preseason, more off season?
I actually do it. I do it during my whole training cycle.
Cool.
Depending on what I'm training for, I will do kettlebells pretty hardcore if I'm just training strength and power, like for a bouldering season or a bouldering trip. If I'm training for sport climbing, then I might slack off on the volume of the kettlebells a little bit, or quite a bit, in my like final 3-week power endurance window right at the end of my training cycle.
Cool.
Just because the volume of my training ramps up fairly high and I want to really focus on the rest in between. So at that point, I might just switch to like a few Turkish get-ups a session or something like that.
Cool.
But it's been huge for me. If you guys haven't checked it out already, you should. You can do that on our website, powercompanyclimbing.com/ebook, or just click on the Train With Us tabs in the ebooks. It's in there. It's also set up as a proven plan with or without coach communication. If you choose the with coach communication, that all goes straight to Paul. So Paul will be the person that you're talking to and working with, and you can send videos and he'll tell you how your videos look and if you're doing things right.
Yeah, we'll do it through Google Drive. We've used some Coach's Eye for stuff of that in the past, slight, or not even slight, some, we'll put the tweaks in there that, need to fit your schedule, yet still get you what you need to get done with that work.
Yeah, cool. And I think that's really valuable. So, but the top 5 reasons that we like to use kettlebells. The number 5 reason is, this one sounds kind of obvious, but I think it's something people don't really think about when they're, or forget to think about when they're planning their training space, is the footprint that a kettlebell takes up is considerably smaller than other implements that you would get a similar adaptation from. So for me, in the machine shop, which any of you who follow on Instagram have seen a lot of photos of, I've got a pretty small floor space for strength training. And a barbell would fit in there, but it would take up the whole floor space. But instead, I've got a rack of 6 or 7 kettlebells that don't take up much space at all. And then I've got plenty of floor space for Turkish get-ups, swings, whatever it is I want to use them for. And then I could just take them out into the driveway and do carries if I want to do carries, or walk around the yard or whatever.
If you were super sadistic, you could just throw them in your pack and hike out to the crag.
I'm not going to do that. Are you fucking crazy? So the footprint of the kettlebells is our number 5. And I think that's, like I said, obvious, but really, really important.
It was kind of obvious, but at the same time it wasn't. We talked about, originally we were going to call this portability, but if you think about it, if you were just going to get a couple kettlebells, say, I'd say for, anywhere from a 12 kilo, so about 25 pounds, to a 24 kilo, or about 55 pounds, you're getting a lot of work out of those. And, if you're going to double those up to a standard 2-leg or 2-arm barbell lift, just for a barbell, that's what, 6.5, 7 feet right there?
Right.
Like compared to a kettlebell, which is about 8 inches long.
Yeah.
Maybe more. Let's just say a foot because I'm bad at math. But
it's about the size of a kickball.
Yeah, there you go. The standard kickball dimension. You're just going to be able to get a lot more weight.
The beast is about the size of a kickball.
I think, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a good kind of standard measurement to throw onto this. But, kickball versus a 7-foot barbell. I think we're going to be in, you're going to get a lot more use out of your space / be able to take that with you way more easily than you are going to be just with the standard barbell set. Not that there's anything wrong with the barbell set.
No, not at all.
But, a lot of us move around a little bit, take trips, still want to keep up with our physical development on those trips. If you can figure out a way to easily transport a barbell on your climbing trips, let me know, because I'd be really interested in knowing how.
Yeah, I mean, whenever Nate is in Lander, several kettlebells just appear in my gym.
Yep.
It's really nice because then I double up on several sizes. And I carried several with me on our big road trip a couple of years ago. And I think it's really important to have with you if you have that capability. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with barbells. If you have space and can do both, great. Our friend Brian Sante uses both pretty regularly, barbells and kettlebells, and believes that they're both important. But he has the space for that in his training area. I could have built in the space for a barbell, but it was going to be considerably added money and time, and the way everything was set up in the training space that I have, it was just going to be quite a bit simpler if I went just kettlebells. So that was a big consideration for me. And it's our number 5 here, and I agree with that. Even though it was a big consideration, all of these others are even more important.
So,
and go ahead.
Yeah, so moving on to the next one would be that there's a low initial investment, starting with the barbell. Say, you're trying to work on some overhead presses or squats, or standard barbell sets, you're probably getting around 200 pounds of weights.
Yeah,
maybe a couple $100.
Expensive.
Yeah. Starting with a 1 kettlebell. You lock me in a room with a 35-pound kettlebell, I'll get stronger after 6 weeks.
Yep.
A lot of people have said that. They're not wrong. So
yeah, and we in our Kettlebells for Climbers ebook, we have. And this was something I dealt with early on, because when we first began collaborating on the Kettlebells for Climbers ebook, I didn't have any experience with kettlebells, was just interested in them. And so I didn't have a kettlebell available to me. And what I ended up doing was just buying. First, actually, I bought an adjustable weight kettlebell, and I think that's an acceptable way to start. However, if I had to go back, I wouldn't have started that way. What I ended up doing was, after a month or two of that adjustable weight kettlebell, I settled on just buying one weight that was the weight that I could overhead press 5 times. And for most climbers, that's going to be a little too light for your pulling, for your swings. But for your pressing work, it's going to be really important. And early on in your strength training journey, that might be the most important part of your strength training.
Yeah, I would argue that most climbers need to put a little bit more work into pressing.
Yeah,
whether
totally.
It's push-ups, overhead presses,
Yep.
horizontal pushing forms of other.
Yep, the floor press that we
Yep.
do in the ebook.
Yeah, because we do a lot of pulling outside of that. So,
Yeah, so
balancing that
much.
out's pretty important.
Yeah, so that low initial investment was a really important part of it for me, that I could just buy one kettlebell, and then if I decided, okay, I'm going to stick to this, I like it, it's going to be meaningful for my training, then I can buy another one. And what we suggest in the ebook is your first bell should be the one that you can overhead press 5 times. Your next bell should be a size or 2 higher.
Yeah. And if you
I prefer the 2 sizes higher for pulls and for swings.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of where I was going there when I tried to jump in there. So, yep.
Yeah, and I think, this shit becomes addicting, frankly, and now I have a bunch of kettlebells.
They tend to multiply, don't they?
They do. They do. And let's talk a little bit about buying them and where to buy them and how to go about that, because there are a lot of kettlebells out there, and they're not all created equally.
Yeah, so, you've got two basic types. You've got competition kettlebells, which, that's kind of the mold that were a lot of the kettlebells that when they started showing up here in the United States were based off of. And, competition kettlebells are, there's a couple different competitions that, or a couple different disciplines that happen with kettlebells, where it's either a clean and press or a long cycle clean and jerk, or, snatch, where you're doing a lot of work without setting the bell down for about 10 minutes.
Right.
And all those bells, no matter what weight they are, their dimensions are the same. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head. I don't compete in that and haven't ever.
How do they do that? Are they hollowed or?
I think they're just different density.
Okay. I wasn't even aware that was actually a thing, but it very well could be.
Yeah. I think it's just a different density bell, or maybe they're hollowed out with different weighted inserts in the middle. I'm sure someone out there knows, so
Yeah.
I'd be psyched to learn. But yeah, so those are all the same dimension. They've kind of got more of a rectangular handle, if I had to give it a shape. Then there's other more conventional style kettlebells. I know Rogue makes a great set.
That's what I've preferred. Yeah.
That's what we use at Crux too. We use Rogue bells. So, but there's other brands out there that make similar ones. Perform Better, Kettlebell Kings. They all make great bells along those styles as well, and they're gonna all have similar dimensions of other bells made by other people of that weight. So, the handles are a little bit less rectangular. They're going to rest on the forearm a little bit better for get-ups and snatches done in the hardstyle way.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the Rogue bells, and when I was first looking to purchase, I was really looking at the ones that were like free shipping, because you look at Rogue bells and the shipping costs a small fortune. But when you average it all out, you're not paying that much more for a good bell if you're paying for shipping than you are for the cheaper bells that have free shipping. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest going with the better brand name bell.
They'll last forever too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as long as you don't leave them out in the rain, they're going to be totally fine.
Yep.
And if you happen to be in like Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, anywhere around there, Rogue is based in Columbus, Ohio. And you can, if you happen to be driving through at some point on your way to the Red, whatever, you can stop through Columbus and pick them up in their shop, which is what I've done several times. I actually had our friend Brian Sante, who I mentioned earlier, buy two bells, my biggest two. I don't even remember what they are, a 90-something pound and the next size down, a 70-something pound. And he picked those up for me. I ordered them. He picked them up. He delivered them to a friend of mine in Cincinnati who put them on his moving truck when he was moving to Colorado. And then I picked them up from him in Colorado during the CWA. So if you can get a friend who's moving across the country, that's a great way too, to not pay shipping and get good bells. So that low initial investment is our number 4 reason, and a really important one. Getting into the more physical reasons why kettlebells are important, our number 3 is that it's one of the only implements that really encourages both stability and strength at the same time. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I do. Not
that barbells don't encourage stability, but not nearly to the degree of a kettlebell.
One of the advantages of the kettlebells, I think, is that you can do a lot of stuff with just one side. So a lot of unilateral movement. So
right.
And so you can work on, and one of the things with an overhead barbell press that could be troublesome is, a lot of people have one shoulder that kind of is a jerk from time to time.
Yep.
Some people have both shoulders that are a jerk from time to time, but a lot of times it's one and one's all right. A lot of times that could be a result of one has a little bit less mobility than the other. And, if you're going to glue both of those arms to the same implement and try and press it overhead, you're either not going to get the range you need to get stronger overhead, or something's going to be pulled out of a position where it should be comfortable and stable and everything needs to be aligned. So, you could be furthering some of the issues you're having with that joint that doesn't have that issue, the joint that has that issue. So, kettlebells allow you to work one side at a time. And, while dumbbells do that too, the kettlebell, the weight sits a little bit off center. So you're getting just a little bit more challenge on keeping everything centered down the chain in the shoulder joint through the elbow, keeping a strong wrist. You'll notice when some people use kettlebell work and press it overhead, that wrist kind of breaks backwards.
Yep.
It's important to have strong aligned wrists, especially as climbers, because, if we're not strong and aligned in our wrists, we're either going to pick up the slack by using our fingers more than we need to, lead to some overuse injury there, or a lot of times you'll see some elbow issues happen.
Yep, totally.
That we're gonna have some tendonitis pop up there. So by focusing on good form and building strength with these bells, we can also help prevent some issues that could result from poor stability otherwise.
Yeah, I also like that the kettlebells sit on your arms in such a way that encourages external rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're floor pressing, overhead pressing, whatever, and dumbbells just don't.
Yep.
So you will tend toward your natural rotation, which for most climbers is an internal rotation, and kettlebells encourage you to be a little more externally rotated.
Absolutely.
While you're pressing.
Yep. And then, another reason kettlebells can help increase our stability too is you can really increase the stability demands by doing bottoms up kettlebell work. Just by flipping the bell upside down, so you're just holding the handle,
right?
And the bell's
the round part of the bell up,
just up in the air. Yeah, and that's really good for focusing on keeping that forearm vertical, working on stability on the joints, shoulders, elbows, wrist, all of that. That's also important to kind of think about as a climber, because as climbers we tend to kind of grab things really strongly.
Yeah.
If you're doing a bottoms up kettlebell press and the bell is not in line with your forearm, and it's at a 45-degree angle and you're just squeezing the shit out of it, you're kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you do bottoms up kettlebell work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, that's something that I really like about unilateral movements in general, is just that it takes a little more focus and a little more awareness to make sure that it doesn't get a little wonky and a little strange. That's lacking in barbell training. And don't get me wrong, I don't dislike barbell training at all. I think it's a really great way to train and an important way to train. But one of the things I really like about kettlebells is that it's all unilateral movement. It puts you off balance a little bit, and you have to compensate a little bit for that through bracing your core in different ways and driving differently between the two legs or the two arms or whatever. And that's what you do while you're climbing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extremely rare that you're doing a bilateral movement while you're climbing.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah. I don't know that it ever even happens, unless you're on a system board with perfectly parallel holds or something. But
standing up on both feet while pulling down with both arms.
Right.
That happens all the time, right?
Yeah, totally. Actually, I watch Annalisa do that all the time. After she clips a bolt, she just grabs two holds and pulls up and looks around. Sorry, babe. Had to call you out a little bit. But so yeah, that's something I really love, is just the unilateral stability focus of kettlebells. And that goes for all of the big movements as well. I have a lot of people do, really heavyweight half rack squats. And
carries with them off to the side, and
anytime you even the holds, just holding a kettlebell in a rack position. I often have people use two different size bells, a couple of sizes apart, while they're just in a rack position and focusing on breathing, because you're never in a situation while you're climbing where you're equally loaded on all sides. And if you can't breathe in a situation where your loading is unequal and putting you a little off balance, then climbing is going to be really hard for you.
That clock's going to start ticking real quick.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so kind of helps focus on breathing behind that tension in the front. So,
Yeah, breathing behind the
I
shield.
guess helping with power endurance, helping with, when you have to do a lot of hard moves right in a row so you don't kind of run out of gas near the end.
Yep, absolutely. You want to take a break? Move on to number 2?
Sounds good.
All right, break. What's up, everybody? Chris here. Pardon the interruption. I'll keep this short and sweet. Since this podcast started taking off and we've been growing it, you guys have been asking how you can help out. I've got 3 ways for you. Number 1, you can become a patron. That just means you give a monthly donation to the podcast, $1 and up, and you get something in return. And you can check out what those rewards are at patreon.com/powercompanypodcast. Best of all, we'll keep it sponsor and commercial free for you. Number 2, you can rate us and review us on iTunes. I know it's a pain in the ass to go to iTunes and do all that, but it really helps us out. At least that's what I'm told by the podcast powers that be. And number 3, perhaps the easiest way and the best way to help us out is to share us on your social medias. Anytime you see us post up a new podcast, please share it with your friends. Tag people who will really appreciate it or who need to hear the advice that we're giving. All right, thank you guys, and back to the show. And we have returned. We're here with Paul Corsaro talking about the top 5 reasons that we like kettlebells here in the StarCraft, the Power Company spaceship in the Red River Gorge. We're on our number 2, and this is actually something that I get a lot of people don't quite understand at first. I think this is a tough concept for people because we've been so steeped in the tradition of add a half a pound, add a pound, just add the smallest plates that you can on each side so you can make really incremental progress, which is great. And that's what I was steeped in. And seeing kettlebells jump from one size to another, take these, 9-pound jumps or whatever they are. Is that right? Is it 9 pounds?
It's usually 8-ish. So if you think about it, it's usually right around an 8-pound jump, 8 to 9. Yeah.
So those big jumps are number 2, is that they encourage mastery and growth at those specific weights. And so let's dig into that a little bit. This is something I hear often. If you're overhead pressing with, say, a 12-kilo bell, is that one of the sizes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I'm still learning the kilos here.
I usually just call them colors. That's the blue bell.
Okay, the blue bell. If you're overhead pressing with the blue bell, and it starts to feel easy, and you're like, okay, I should be moving up, but then you try the next bell up, which is
Yellow.
Is yellow after blue?
Yes.
At Crux it is. There may be a 14 kilo bell, but I don't have it.
No,
yeah.
I think yellow is. In my head, yellow was smaller than blue, but I think I had them switched.
Yeah, no, yellow's the 16 kilo.
Thank you, Taylor. So if you want to move up to the yellow bell, but you get 2 reps in, and you're like, there's no fucking way I'm finishing 5 reps.
Yep.
What's the benefit in going back to that blue bell?
Well, you get to build some volume. There's, increased volume at that weight's going to build your tissue's tolerance to stress, keep sending signals to adapt for that tissue. And also you're going to keep grooving that pattern, keep getting better at that pressing pattern.
Mm-hmm.
A heavier bell, it's going to be required that you're going to have to generate more core tension, squeeze the glutes more, access more of your body's strength. So, as you get more tired through your pressing arm with that lighter bell, you're going to have to call all those other factors into play. You're going to have to squeeze the core more. You're going to have to squeeze the glutes more. You're going to have to squeeze that free hand more.
Right.
So, letting that fatigue happen and forcing you to kind of bring other things into play while pressing that same weight bell is going to be a little bit less threatening and more approachable way to learning that skill of really, dialing in.
Talking is hard, Paul.
Sure is. It's really going to help reinforce that skill of dialing into everything you need to do to get the most out of your body in terms of strength and, we've said this word a lot tonight, but tension.
Yeah,
how to get
really
the most
learning to
possible
create
tension
tension.
out of everything. So, it really highlights these learning opportunities and instilling a sense of patience and really looking at getting good at moving well instead of just trying to do a little bit more numbers wise.
Yep, and that's something I really liked about the kettlebell ebook. The few times that I've gone through it, is that I know that the next week there's another round being added. So I'm not as tempted to try and jump up to the yellow bell, you know, or move up to whatever that next size is, because I know next week there's going to be more volume. It's going to be a little harder. And once you move through those weeks, consistently adding volume the way that we do in the first phases of the kettlebell plan, then moving up to that next bell becomes considerably easier than if we had just jumped up how we're taught to do.
Right.
You know, as soon as you can do it, then move to the next weight.
Yeah. And yeah, jumping up and then trying to do that increased volume when you've tried to jump up and weight a little bit earlier than you should have, like there's no way those sessions are going to go as planned. Like you're probably going to have to drop back down, you know, maybe a little bit of mental stress from that. God forbid something bad happens injury-wise, you know, it really helps promote a bit more patience this way.
Yep. Here's a question for you. I've heard a lot of people comment on getting stuck at a Turkish get-up weight in particular. And I do think this is a tough exercise to advance in. And Nate suggested something to me this past summer that I've employed and really liked that I had just never even thought about. And that's that I do 2 get-ups in a row without putting the bell down. And I was like, mind blown, you know, like, oh, I don't just do 1 get-up and put the bell back down.
It gets way harder when you do more than one, doesn't it?
Way harder that second time. And you really have to focus and you really have to dig in. Even at a weight that felt pretty damn easy on the first get-up, the second one is like, all right, it's game time. I really have to focus on this one.
We actually just had someone at Crux finish up a Turkish get-up cycle where she was owning the 35-pound kettlebell. She's actually not a climber, so she may never hear this, but she was owning the 35-pound kettlebell, and then, you know, she could get a single with the 44-pound kettlebell every now and then, and we just went through a cycle where she was doing 3 in a row with the 35-pound kettlebell for 5 sets.
Wow.
2 weeks ago, she has done, as of 2 weeks ago, she is doing consistent singles with the 55-pound kettlebell.
Wow.
All because of that. And just took a couple weeks of just building volume with the slightly lighter bell than like a heavy single bell.
Right. Yep. So that's a good method in your opinion.
I think so.
To double up on those reps. And the reason that was kind of mind-blowing to me, and I'm not saying this is a fault in the program. It's more a fault in the fact that I've not gotten the double bell program out yet. So, you know, you've got it mostly written. We just have to format it and put it out there into the world.
It's been a minute. There'll probably be some tweaks.
It's been a while. So I've just repeated the single bell program over and over, and we're only doing single get-ups in that program. We're doing some complexes where a get-up is part of the complex. But it had just never occurred to me, well, shit, just do another get-up before you put the bell on the floor. You know, so adding that volume, just like you would in adding rounds, adding reps of overhead presses or racks, half rack squats or whatever it is.
Yeah, another one I really like is doing a get-up, and at the top of a get-up, take it for a walk, doing like an overhead carry, like down the length of the room and back, and then get back down. So you're just pretty much adding an overhead carry at the top of the get-up. That's another good way to add some time under tension to the shoulder.
Yep. Yeah, super cool. Super cool. And I really just, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Most of us have been steeped in this tradition of add a half a pound, add a pound, add 2 pounds, you know, just very slowly add weight. And what I see happen so often in that situation, and I've seen people try it with kettlebells. I watched a friend of mine damn near drop a kettlebell on his face because he wanted to do a get up with a bigger weight. He was like, no, I just did that one. And I'm like, no, you really didn't. That didn't even resemble a Turkish get up, you know? And he's like, no, I stood up with it. It was fine. And then he tried to do it with the next bell, and it hit the floor, and he got his head out of the way in time.
I think, those big gaps kind of help highlight that more than other weights.
It highlighted it for sure.
It's like, after someone does their first 12A or 11A or 10A or 13A or something, they don't immediately go and try a 13B their next pitch or 12B their next pitch.
Or if they do, it doesn't. Most of
the
time,
usually
it
doesn't go well.
Poorly.
Yeah. Building volume at your limit or just below your limit is key in pretty much anything you do performance-wise.
Yeah. It's the same as trying to master that grade or two below what your very top grade is. If you want to climb 513, then mastering 12B, 12C and being able to climb a lot of that without getting really, really fatigued becomes a really important skill, because that's what a lot of the moderate climbing on a 13A is. And that's really similar to mastering a Turkish get up at one weight before making the jump to the next weight. And it encouraged, those big gaps encourage that. And that doesn't happen with barbells.
And by working on mastery, you're going to get a lot more growth that way.
Yeah, totally. Our number one for why we like kettlebells, especially for climbers, is that they really encourage athletic movement. It's not just pick up a heavy weight, set it down. There's quite a bit that goes into it. And I've used the Turkish get up as an example a lot of times and called it, I think about it like a boulder problem. Like, it's got all these little intricate parts, and you have to be really, really good at these intricate parts to make a successful Turkish get up. It's like a 5-move boulder problem.
And especially on the way down when you're tired, like if you start rushing or get impatient, things are going to go south on you. But at the same time, if you understand that you're tired and it's okay, and you just stay focused, stay deliberate, and remember your beta, as a way to say it simply, you'll finish that get up. So It's a good kind of mental training for that.
Yeah, and I think that's the foundation of it, is something like the Turkish get up and treating it like a boulder problem. But then you move into these ballistic movements like swings and snatches, cleans even, that are really, really athletic, in that you have to create all this momentum. You're swinging this big, heavy iron object around, and then you have to stop it, and you have to control it, and you have to do that through your own tension.
Yep.
And that's really what athleticism is creating force and being able to have some control over what happens with that force.
Absolutely, yeah. Flipping that switch of turning tension on and turning tension off. So, let's say a kettlebell swing, when you're exploding out of that backswing position, you're generating a lot of force, you're getting tight, you're standing up into that plank, and then you're just holding that plank, holding that tension as the bell's floating. And the second that bell gets back into that backswing phase, you're being able to release that tension, throw that bell behind you, get a good stretch through the hamstrings, and then reverse that and bring it right back up into that plank. So you're basically standing up into a really tight hardstyle plank, relaxing as you reload, and just doing that over and over and over again, similar to, say, on a hard compression problem where you're going to explode off of a foot, hit a sloper and squeeze with all your body, move your feet where you need to do it, get the foot in place, do that next move, get tight, relax, reset for the next move, get tight, relax. So again, we kind of talked about this in other episodes, but it's a simpler context for a skill that can be demonstrated in much more complex ways when climbing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the kettlebell swing, which is sort of the bedrock with which kettlebell training is built on, almost everyone recognizes a kettlebell swing and they know what it is. I think a lot of people don't quite understand it, though. Trying to swing a heavy kettlebell is totally different than trying to swing a 20-pound kettlebell. And I'm not saying you should just jump in and swing a beast, but building up to that is something really important for the forces generated in really hard climbing. Learning how to control, and I use the word control lightly there because you're really just accepting its momentum and then learning how to change the momentum.
Yep.
You're not controlling it as much as you're just moving with it and understanding it, you know.
And making sure you're rooted into the ground so the bell doesn't pull you forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So there's some level of control there, and that's exactly what climbing is. You know, they're really hard moves. There's a level of out of control that has to be there. And if you can't toe that line, then you're going to end up unsuccessful. And I really think swinging a really heavy kettlebell, for me, has been hugely important for towing that line, because I've taken it overboard. Like, I've tried to swing a kettlebell when I'm not quite ready and I'm having to like stutter step a little bit,
take a couple steps forward, swing, take a couple steps forward,
and then I'm like, okay, I wasn't ready.
Yep.
You know, reset, put it on the ground, breathe, brace, try again. You know, and that's exactly how climbing moves are. If you're not ready, you're not going to latch the hold. But the better you can get at making yourself ready, at bracing, at creating that tension and being prepared for those forces that are about to happen, the faster you're going to be successful at those crux moves on your project.
Yep. Yeah, and you know, that's kind of climbing's an athletic sport, just like everything else. Being able to tap into that athleticism is huge for success.
Yeah, and that's not saying that you can't learn these athletic movements through barbells and Olympic lifts, things like that.
Or even fast power lifts. Like, it's doable.
Yeah, it's just totally doable.
It's just a way we like.
Kettlebells are a really easy intro into that, and not just an intro. I think they're it's easy to get a foothold in it, and then you can take it as far as you want with kettlebells, frankly. But there are other avenues. This isn't the only way to do that. This is just what we like.
Yeah. And we like them a lot.
Yeah. And you guys, if you haven't, check out the Kettlebells for Climbers ebook. If you have no experience with kettlebells, I had zero when I started this plan. And now I feel like I know quite a bit about how to use a kettlebell. And that's all through watching the videos that Paul created for this plan. And it's going to go through all of the basics, the get-ups, all of the presses, swings. You're going to learn a lot in this initial plan. You're going to learn how to structure your training so that you're adding volume. You're going to learn complexes, how to take one kettlebell movement, transition it into another, and then, you know, wrap that whole movement up. And I just think it's a really great primer and a great training plan for getting stronger for climbing.
If you're ever curious about kettlebell work and want some in-person instruction, you can always look up on the Strong First website, and you can find an instructor close to you too.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in the Chattanooga area, look up Paul at Crux Conditioning. He's also on the internets, cruxconditioning.com, and on the Facebooks and the Instagrams at Crux Conditioning. You know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find that kettlebell ebook at powercompanyclimbing.com backslash, I almost said backsplash. That's not what you want to do. Backslash ebook. And on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, we are at Power Company Climbing. You can look for Paul on the Twitters.
I'm not on there.
You're not going to find him. And you're not going to find Power Company Climbing on the Twitters because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time